Welcome to Crosscut Now. In today's episode, we're here at the state capitol for a one-on-one sit-down with Washington's 23rd Governor Jay Inslee. We'll have a preview on his final year in office ahead of his 12th legislative session as governor. We'll also look at the latest Crosscut Elway poll as Washington voters are unsurprisingly partisan when it comes to next year's gubernatorial race. And a new public safety pilot project has been on the street for a couple of months. In today's top story, he's currently the longest-serving U.S. governor with more than 30 years in elected office. We sat down with Washington Governor Jay Inslee, now in his third and final term, to learn how he plans to tackle his massive priority list with just 1 year left in office. Washington is grappling with a list of crises like many other cities across the country: homelessness, affordable housing shortage, and an opioid epidemic, to name a few. While at the same time, the state also leads on climate change and has one of the highest minimum wages. Ahead of his 12th legislative session, I sat down with Governor Jay Inslee to learn how he plans to tackle his priorities during his final year in leadership. Well, Governor, first and foremost, thank you for giving us some time and out of your schedule to join us today.
Thank you.
We are just a couple of days into the new year. You have a lot of priorities on your to-do list, as you said. We're going to get to those priorities, but one thing that I'm curious about is, do you have any New Year's resolutions or intentions as you're looking at this final year in office?
Well, I've decided to really have a difficult resolution, which is to be gracious and humble when the Huskies win the national championship over Michigan and help my fellow governor Gretchen Whitmer get through her loss. So that's my resolution. I'm sticking to it.
A lot of people are with you on that one.
Yeah.
One thing that is a cornerstone of your time in office has been the environment. What do you wish the general public would understand about the urgency of the world's ecological challenges?
Well, I think the large majority of Washingtons do have an understanding of this, in part because they're now experiencing it. I'm not sure you could say that 10 years ago, but now Washingtonians have a situation where their kids can't go out and play because of the forest fire smoke. They've seen Medical Lake, a whole town, burn down last summer. They're seeing salmon stocks disappearing in part because of water temperature issues. And they're seeing their children have asthma because of pollution from burning gas and oil. So I think the vast majority of Washingtons actually do now understand that this is not something that's just for our grandchildren. We're experiencing it right now. We arguably have the best climate and clean energy policies in the United States, in part because they focus on equity as well, so that communities of poverty who've been choking on the most pollution gets the most help and the like. We're doing very meaningful things. We have a commitment to 100% clean energy. We have a low carbon fuel standard. We have the best building standards in the United States. We're going to make sure people get access to heat pumps so you don't have to use dirty, dangerous, toxic methane gas. We have a Climate Commitment Act that is now generating funds that goes back to Washingtonians instead of just going into the $200 billion profits of the oil companies. So we have all those really active things, but we do need to make sure they happen faster. This is a race. This is a race between us and pollution. And I'm committed that we're going to win this race because our kids deserve this. I just can't believe that we're going to allow our grandchildren to have no ice on Mount Rainier, no salmon in the river, and not be able to go out and play because the forest fire smoke is so terrible. I can't believe that's an acceptable future for us.
And one thing that you just mentioned in regard to those communities that are impacted by our changing climate, one of the things you're proposing is the utility rebates for low and middle income Washingtonians. With 1 year of those rebates going on currently, is it enough to make up for those energy increases?
It is significant. It will help 2 million Washingtonians. It's not insignificant to have $200 a family to help, but perhaps that should be permanent. Actually, there's 100 ways to help people with the economic consequences of anything that we do. One is cash, and the utility credit is, in a sense, cash. But the other is to get people equipment, services, and resources to replace the need to buy fossil fuels. And that's what we're doing. We're getting people solar panels you put on your roof. I met a orchard worker, ag worker in Toppenish the other day. We got solar panels on her roof. Her utility bill is now zero for her family. Now, that's different than cash, but it has the same benefit because it can save you money over the long run. Getting people more charging stations, getting schools electric school buses right now so they don't have to buy old, dirty, stinky buses. All of these things are helpful even economically for people as well as health-related. And fundamentally, this is a health issue.
A couple days before Christmas, there was some news that came out with regards to a pretty closely watched case. The officers that were involved or accused of Manny Ellis' death, and they were acquitted. And this trial was the first under the state authority to prosecute police for misconduct. The verdict has left, as you can imagine, many raw. And my question to you is, what have we learned in these type of cases where we are seeing Black and brown and low-income communities disproportionately impacted by these types of incidents? What have we learned in this regard?
Well, I think we've learned that it's really important to have a credible investigation to start with. I asked that investigation to take place. We now have an independent investigation agency to do that independently, who are not police officers, but an independent source. I think this has demonstrated the wisdom of that, of having and insisting upon a truly independent investigation to get the facts as best as you can ascertain them. I think that the police accountability laws that were embraced here, I signed them. I think that they were appropriate. And then the jurors made a decision. There were some questions about the wisdom of some of the trial court's evidentiary ruling that are controversial. I may not have made the same decision, but we have to have a process, and we had one here. And I know people who were not satisfied with it feel passionately about it. But I think we are heading in the right direction to make sure we have more independent assessment of police conduct here. One of the things we need to do is to continue our effort to have better training for our law enforcement officials, to teach them de-escalation techniques, to teach them how to have reduced violence, more rational discussion with citizens rather than violence, teach them how to work with the mental health professionals so you get people mental health treatment when they need it in times of distress.
Let's talk about elections, the upcoming election. Do you think Washington should consider keeping presidential candidates that have been credibly accused of starting an insurrection off the primary ballot?
I think this is a decision for the judicial branch. This is a decision for our courts to decide. I don't think it should be for politicians like myself. It should be for judges who can judge the facts, who can judge whether a person was engaged in an insurgency and whether their office is included under the 14th Amendment. Those are decisions I'm confident will be made. I can't tell you which way they will be made, but I think that the Supreme Court will have to ferret out that decision. I think there's a lot of evidence in this case that there was someone engaged in insurgency, but that needs to be decided in the courts, and I'm confident it will be. And when it is, we're going to need to respect it, pro or con, because that's a fundamental thing to our democracy, which I believe is in threat, because we have a person now that fundamentally doesn't want to respect the will of the voters. That's a threat, and I hope we can surmount it.
Is there anything left undone? Of course, you still have a whole year, but is there anything that you still, like a hope and dream that you just want to get accomplished?
You bet. I'm as excited today as I were on the first day. Now, maybe you think that's a cliche, but it's true. I literally feel as excited as the first day I took this office, because there's thousands of people I can help in the next 12 months. I can help those families who have a teenager in crisis get help. I can help somebody whose brother has been homeless for years because they have a chemical addiction problem. And I can certainly help our kids to have a future so they don't have a diminished Washington State. And so, listen, this is a very lucky position I'm in to be able to help people. It is a blessing. Not everybody gets up every morning and figure out, how can I help somebody? It's a wonderful thing, and I've got a very, very lucky year ahead to continue that effort. But we've had a heck of a run. This last decade has been one of, I would argue, unparalleled progress for the state of Washington. Best family leave, protection of women's choice, gun safety, highest minimum wage, best financial aid package so people can get to school, the McCleary decision on financing schools, which was a huge lift, huge transportation efforts. Now, we got to make sure all of those continue, and that's why I'll be real active this next year.
It was an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much, Governor, for taking the time to talk with us with Crosscut.
Thank you.
We appreciate
Good
it.
odds.
Thank you. A new Crosscut Elway poll suggests Washington voters remain divided along party lines for next year's upcoming governor's race. We'll take a look at some of the key takeaways from the poll. The latest Crosscut Elway poll sheds some insight on the upcoming Washington state governor's race for the November 2024 election. Of the more than 400 voters who participated, sentiment proved to be partisan. Respondents were asked how current Governor Jay Inslee is doing on the job, and nearly 56% said he's doing a fair or poor job, compared to 40% who considered his leadership to be excellent or good. Pollster Stuart Elway says Inslee's popularity is higher than his predecessors during this same time of their last year in office. Meanwhile, 39% of respondents thought Democrats should keep control of state government, 28% thought Republicans should be in charge, and 25% thought control should be divided. The poll asked Washingtonians to think about next year's governor's race and consider the most important issues or factors in determining who they would vote for. Ideology, personal qualities, homelessness, and the economy topped the list. There's a new approach to crisis response on Seattle streets. We'll tell you about the newest team working alongside Seattle police to help those experiencing vulnerable situations. This fall, a new public safety department has been on patrol in Seattle to help people in crisis, making sure those with the right skills are meeting their needs and freeing police officers to focus on crime and other public safety needs. The Community Assisted Response and Engagement, or CARE team, works with people facing mental and behavioral health crises. This new approach to crisis response is part of the Seattle Police Department's pivot in recent years, partly in response to the Black Lives Matter protests following the Minneapolis police killing of George Floyd. The dual dispatch pilot program sends the CARE team to answer calls in which there is no threat of violence and medical emergency. The CARE team is dispatched simultaneously with police officers for 911 calls that appear to require the intervention of a crisis responder with mental health expertise. Police officers make sure the situation is safe for CARE teams to engage before departing to attend to other high-priority calls. I'm Paris Jackson. Thank you for watching Crosscut Now, your destination for nonprofit Northwest news. Go to crosscut.com for more.